I do want to ask you guys about this because you're in communications, because you obviously, I believe you're reasonably interested in women's sports, all these sorts, communications and everything else. I want to ask you guys about this Charissa Thompson story. And for those who missed it, we'll play the clip here in a second. But this is an NFL, formerly an NFL sideline reporter. She's now more of an, what do they call it, an anchor. Yeah, for Fox and for Amazon and their NFL coverage. And she goes out and she says on the Pardon My Take podcast that from time to time, I'll make up a report. And I want everyone to hear her words or her way of phrasing this before we actually get into the discussion. So I'm going to play that now.
And I've said this before, so I haven't been fired for saying it, but I'll say it again. I would make up the report sometimes because the coach wouldn't come out at halftime or it was too late. And I was like, I didn't want to screw up the report. So I was like, I'm just going to make this up because first of all, no coach is going to get mad if I say, hey, we need to stop hurting ourselves. We need to be better on third down. We need to stop turning the ball
Pressure
over.
the quarterback.
Yeah, exactly. and do a better job of getting off the field. Like, they're not going to correct me on that.
Right.
So I'm like, it's fine. I'll just make up the report.
So her point essentially being, if I just kind of use some cliches that coaches are going to use anyway, the coach won't criticize me. But this, of course, had backlash on like, well, you're just making this shit up. Like, what's the point of even having these reports? And Erin Andrews came out, who did that job for a very long time on the sidelines of the NFL. I'm not sure if she's still doing it. Yeah, okay. So she said, I kind of get where she's coming from. I've sort of done the same thing before. But the point being that if the coach is going to give me nothing or isn't going to give me the interview or not going to give me enough time, I can easily just kind of make up, well, they believe that, their defense is going to have to be better in the second half, which we all know. We all watched the first half. Obviously, it's going to have to be better in the second half.
Can I add some context to that?
Please do, yeah.
Erin Andrews and Charissa Thompson have a podcast together. They're quite good friends.
Okay.
And so that was I think that was more of a defensive
empathizing.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. I looked I did not know they had a podcast together. I searched Erin Andrews, tried to find I didn't look hard enough, obviously. So I guess the reason I wanted to ask you guys as people who are involved in covering women's sports and whatever is this, of course, turns to women reporters. They'll just make things up or right? Like this is and there were certain other women's women reporters saying that this sets us back. You can't make things up. And I guess before I hand it to you, I would sort of say, and I've said it on this podcast a few times, sports reporters in a lot of ways not really any different than the people who cover the movie industry or the music industry. I don't know if it's journalism. I'd certainly prefer you tell me the truth, but I consider journalism like people who are in Gaza right now or people covering like what we're talking about, what this show is every week is kind of Candyland, right? It's the toy store. It's not that important, but I do want people to tell me the truth. But I also sort of find these intermission reports in hockey, we're going to get pucks in deep and give it 110%. Shut up. I don't care. So I wonder how important this story actually is. And the fact that she's kind of going, yeah, I know he's going to tell me that we got to be better on third down, so I'll just say they're going to be better on third down. What do you guys think of this? I need to do way better at picking a name and handing it to somebody instead of just being like, someone over there, take it.
Before we get into what was said, just to touch on what you said about this is kind of Candyland, we do get to talk about fun things a lot in sports, and that's great. There are reporters in sports, journalists, who have uncovered things like sexual abuse scandals and
that's totally fair.
And I don't think it's all sunshine and roses.
No, you're right about
reporting.
that.
Katie Strang.
Katie Strang is the name.
Yes.
Rick Westhead has done great work. Mendez has been in on a bunch of. You're right. You're right.
I will admit, sorry to interrupt.
No, you go.
But like Mark Masters talking to William Nylander between the first and second period about what did you guys do well?
Beat reporters and journalists are different things. Yeah. Like it's not to disparage one or the other. It's just a different job.
Right.
I will admit I didn't have a strong opinion about this because I'm not overly surprised. Not that like she made it up, but that there are times where what they're going to say anyway. And,
yes.
And have we all cut corners in our job before? Of course. I'm surprised she admitted to it publicly. Yeah. What I hate and what you alluded to, Matt, is that a woman does anything and therefore it speaks to the whole gender.
A man does the same thing, and it's just he's an asshole. He's bad at his job. He's not doing his job. A woman does the exact same friggin' thing, and it's, well, women shouldn't be doing this. Like, this is a classic case of everything one woman does represents the entire gender.
All women, yeah.
And I really, really hate that. Because, like, yeah, I think that she's admitting to cutting corners in her job. I'm not surprised that this happens. But
So if we keep the spotlight just on her, do you think less of her for doing it?
Honestly, I didn't have an opinion of her to begin with. Like, because I'm the same way. Like, I don't really care about the sideline reporters.
No.
I see the important work that they do, and there was a lot of rhetoric this week about like the fact that sideline reporting is an art form. It is a very important job.
Very difficult at
Very
times.
difficult. I've never once watched a sideline report and gone, I want to do that. It looks like hell to me.
See, I
but
come
didn't
down
really
on the
have-
opposite side of that. Like, I don't think it's important. They don't say anything. They don't give you anything. So fuck it. Like,
It's important because of the relationships you build between that media company and that coach and that team.
I guess.
I think
oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think the relationships are where the real value, and like, just because I don't like them, I think that there is value in those reports. I think there are
believe that
people who love
relationship.
them.
Yeah.
I think there are.
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
there are
okay.
people who think differently than we do.
Yeah.
And you know what? Like 99 times out of 100, you're going to get the most boring. Exactly what you said.
Same thing.
Got to do better on third downs, protect our quarterback, blah,
Yeah.
blah, blah. But one time out of 100, you're going to get something like the post game at the Michigan game a couple weeks ago when Harbaugh wasn't there and the coach that was filling in for him started crying as though Harbaugh had died. And like, listen, I fucking hate Michigan and I hate Harbaugh. And I think this whole thing is so ridiculous, but I love it because I love drama in sports.
Right.
And like that shit is funny to me. And the fact that she was there to get a microphone in front of his face post game to get his tears on camera, that's great. Like that
yeah.
wouldn't have we wouldn't have gotten that
Yeah.
part of this whole story
Yeah.
without a sideline reporter.
It's like worth the 99 boring stories for the one
Exactly.
amazing. Remember the Richard Sherman quote like years ago? I think after they won. Don't you ever talk about me? And they'll never forget that. I can't remember who the sideline reporter was. It may
was
have been Aaron
It
Andrews.
was Aaron Andrews.
Yeah, she was just like, "Who's talking about
Yeah.
you?" And then like put the mic back into his face, and I was like, "Could you imagine being her?"
Right?
Like it does create those viral clips of drama, and yeah, you got to weed through the crap to get to them.
Yep.
But it is an important role in terms of how broadcasts are structured these days. And again, I'm surprised someone admitted to cutting corners.
That
in
is a
their
big
job.
part of this, to go on the air. And she says at the beginning of her, I've said this before, like, okay,
We never caught that before.
all right. And how many times are you going to admit to, your employers that's paying you $700,000? Yeah, sometimes I just,
Make shit up.
I guess.
Yeah.
What that speaks to is like it's probably very common, and there are
I
other people
guess.
who maybe just haven't admitted publicly to it.
Yeah.
I think that's probably the better strategy.
Yeah.
yeah.
Maybe don't say it publicly.
One thing that did extra upset me about this whole thing
Extra
was
upset.
Aaron Andrews admitting to it.
Yeah.
Because Aaron Andrews took Pam Oliver's job,
Yep.
and I used to really
Yep.
love Pam Oliver.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, I
'Cause
still
we
love
haven't-
Pam Oliver. She's
Sure.
still around. But like,
And we haven't heard
she-
Pam say she did it.
Exactly. Actually, she very openly has said her and Laura Oakham have Oakram they talked to Laura the other day. The Athletic did a piece with
Yes.
her, like wanting to know what her feelings on this whole thing were, and she said that her and Pam Oliver had been texting all day about it. Like they are very affected by this. These are women who take this job very, very seriously.
Because there are women out there doing this the best they can and doing and already taking the extra shit that comes with
Yeah.
being a women's
Exactly.
sports reporter. And now, I don't know, you're just somebody who's covering LSU and some asshole is going to turn around and say to you, well, are you making upset? I had nothing to do with this, right? Like you're just,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying? Like
It questions
gotta-
the
every-
legitimacy of every
Yes.
single one.
Exactly.
And so I don't. You are absolutely right to have corrected me that Katie Strang and Rick Westhead and like there are people out there doing journalism around sports. I just sort of look at these halftime reports or these intermission interviews and kind of go, I just don't care. And so
Also, another
if you make
point
up
to that though is that like it's also for a lot of women, especially women in sports, like that's where you start.
Yeah, that's-
Jamel
Yeah.
Hill, like that's where she started. She
For a
works
long
the
time, It was the only job available to women.
Exactly.
Like, let's not forget, there's still a huge issue in sports, especially football, and I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, go.
Where, like, women are just talking heads.
Yeah.
And they're not given an opportunity to provide actual opinion and analysis. And unfortunately, they are often thrown into these sideline reporter roles. But, like, if that's their entry point, if that's their stepping stone, that's all they're going to be given in the early days. It is a very important role.
Yeah. And I mean, look at Holly Rowe. Holly Rowe is like the ultimate sideline reporter. We would die for Holly Rowe. And like what she has given us is incredible. What she gives the sports world is incredible. And now like even her legitimacy is questioned. Holly fucking Rowe?
Absolutely not.
Like, yeah. No.
Come at Holly, I dare you.
I look at somebody, for me, like as a big UFC fan, the job that Megan O'Leary has done covering that sport. And she's fantastic in a sport that is, you know, at the same time they were introducing women's fighters, they still had the bikini babes holding up the round number and you know, these sorts of things that were not super progressive. And yet she's getting in there with these guys who, quite frankly, you know, have just finished trading punches and the testosterone's flowing and like it's not a great place to be. And she's doing a fantastic job covering it. And yet I find those interviews with the person who's just been through it, like I still don't know that I call that journalism, but I'm interested in that. Whereas I guess I'm just having a hard time getting worked up that someone turned around and goes, yeah, I know what that coach would have said. I'll just say it. Like, I think it's bullshit. I don't want to be lied to, but I also don't care enough about the interview to be, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's kind of, this isn't important enough of a subject to get me to care that she made it up. I do care that it's now painting an entire industry as, you know, who do we trust? Who are the people who are actually getting the interviews and telling us the truth? Like that part. That's a huge part of it.
And it's the ripple effects of this and what we just talked about. Now a bunch of female reporters are having to essentially justify their space here. And I hate that.
I haven't seen, there are male sideline reporters and I have not seen.
They've been dead silent.
Yeah.
Like, come on. Because no one's called them into question.
Yeah.
Because again, a guy does something, he's a jerk. He's bad at his job. Him. A
Singular.
woman does something, it's all women. And it's so frustrating that this is just another example of that.
Yeah.